I'll say this to Prime Minister Netanyahu, finish them. Finish them.
The people she's telling them to finish would be 2 million civilians, over 50% of those children. Would we be wrong for fighting back against that in America? The recent escalating aggressions between Israel and Palestine has caused some interesting fighting inside the GOP as to what the right answer and response should be from America, with neocons like Nikki Haley practically calling for the genocide of Palestinians, Hamas, and civilians alike, with others like Pence saying that we should stand strong with Israel, sending aid, not boots, or get into a war. I want to look at a few of these clips. First up is Nikki Haley ostensibly calling for Israel to declare war on Iran.
They were celebrating. And what were they celebrating? They were saying death to Israel, death to America. This is not just an attack on Israel. This is an attack on America because they hate us just as much. And what we have to understand is this is the reason that we have to unite around making sure our enemies do not hurt our friends. America can never be so arrogant to think we don't need friends, just like we needed them on 9/11. That's why Ukraine needs us when Russia's doing this. That's why Israel needs us when Hamas and Iran are doing this. And I'll say this to Prime Minister Netanyahu, finish them. Finish them. Hamas did this. You know Iran's behind it. Finish them. They should have hell to pay for what they've just done.
Now, to put into context here, the people she's telling them to finish would be 2 million civilians, over 50% of those children, all of whom have been subjected to Israel occupation and control that has been growing throughout the years, and we'll show that at the end. And 90% of those civilians live in abject poverty and are now without access to water, electricity, and other basic necessities for survival. Real quick, I want to look at Pence before we dive into this, who took some shots at his former running mate, as well as Vivek, as for having played a role in these events as to how America looks.
This is what happens when we have leading voices like Donald Trump, Vivek Ramaswamy, and Ron DeSantis signaling retreat from America's role as leader of the free world. What happened in Ukraine was an unprovoked invasion by Russia. What happened this weekend was an unprovoked invasion by Hamas into Israel. And I really believe now more than ever, both the debate within the Republican Party and the debate within America is whether or not we're going to once again stand without apology as the leader of the free world, as the arsenal of democracy.
So we're not going to get too deep into Vivek here, but he had one stance on Israel saying we need to walk back aid completely by 2028, and now is walking that stance back since he's being called out about it by Haley and other Republicans. It just shows how delicate of an issue this is and how, as the tides shift among the parties, it can influence people to reflect their beliefs differently. I think the biggest thing to remember in times like these is that the Palestine people are not the Hamas, and they should not be blamed for the false hope the Hamas provide as a result of the despair and desperation caused by Israel. They are still victims of the imperialism and the control of Israel, where they're subject to traditions and beliefs that they don't agree with against their whim. They don't have a say in these things. If they disagree, they're killed. They're murdered a lot of times regardless. And the ones who are lucky enough to live are subject to complete poverty. The cycle of violence and just despair and sadness over there is depressing just to think about and get into. But the solution is never going to be simple and straightforward. And definitely it's not going to be getting hawkishly genocidal. That's never going to be the answer. You're not going to end a cycle by feeding into that cycle. You're not going to end a cycle of violence with violence. At the best outcome is you become the top dog of that cycle as it continues, right? We should be aiming to break these negative maladaptive cycles. But America is already set in its ways as to who it's going to defend, which is Israel, and they will overwhelmingly expend efforts to defeat people in primaries who might have differentiating views as to how to attack this problem or what the solutions may be. Some interesting statistics found in a 2023 Gallup poll: 49% of Democrats feel more sympathy for Palestinians than Israelis. This is the first time a poll has shown that the majority of people support Palestine over Israel, with only 38% showing support for Israel. I think it was like 13% or something no opinion. With Republicans, though, it was a much different story, with 78% of Republicans wanting to defend Israel, with only 11% being more sympathetic towards Palestinians. Now, I want to show a few things here to also add context to the full situation over there. Here is a chart that shows deaths and injuries on both sides of this conflict by the year for the last decade. So we can maybe see who is the aggressor, who is doing the more damage, and who is the one that should be considered the terrorist here. Overwhelmingly, it's Palestinians being slaughtered or injured by Israelis, and the ones who are lucky enough to live do so in abject poverty without access to basic necessities to survive. Here's a map that shows how Israel's control and occupation of Palestinian land has increasingly grown throughout the years, how Palestinians has not only shrunk in their own territory, but then has given up control to Israel. Now, the question that I want to pose at the end of this video is, seeing the context, seeing the numbers, seeing the damage that the Israelis have done to the Palestinians in their conquest of occupation and total control of their land, would we be wrong for fighting back against that in America? If you enjoyed this video, we're Social Society. We're a commentary channel influenced by politics, society, and the economy. We are pretty left-leaning on this channel, but we're open to our right-wingers as well. The biggest thing here is having conversations that get everyone to the bottom of the truth. If that sounds like something that could interest you, consider smashing that subscribe button. Why haven't you already? Leave us a like or even comment on this video, because the only way we become a society is together.